Hey, it worked. It
Hey,
worked. Okay, excellent.
do some
Excellent.
adjusting.
I know, we'll figure out the framing here. Okay. How's your day
Nice.
going so far? Happy Sunday.
Good, good.
Good.
Quiet.
Yeah.
Keeping Sunday quiet.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
You don't usually work on weekends, right?
It depends. I do sometimes,
Hmm.
especially with Reiki and coaching, people can't do weekdays, during
Right.
with their jobs and stuff. So I try to keep Sundays open generally, but Saturdays I do work sometimes.
Okay.
But
And so how's it been in LA? I know other parts of California have been pretty brutal with weather and fires and everything, so I wasn't sure how it is in your neck of the woods.
it's lately it's been fine here in LA. It's
Okay.
I know there's a lot more fires up north,
Right.
so we're not seeing so much of it down here.
Okay.
Maybe smaller spot fires, kind of regionally,
Okay.
but not the big ones like up north.
And how long have you lived in LA? I know you told me the other day. I can't remember. A couple of years
I
or?
moved here Valentine's Day of 2020. So
Oh, nice.
one
Oh
month before
gosh.
lockdown.
Excellent timing.
So I essentially have had no life here.
Right, right.
And
Moved to a city that you can't actually leave. So
kinda, yeah.
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 How has it been during lockdown?
For me, it's been a really interesting time. At first, I was like totally fine with it. I'm a classic Virgo. I'm good on my own. I had projects and I had stuff to do and things I wanted to work on for myself. So it was great. And LA's classic, notorious traffic just kind of
Mhm.
died away,
Right,
got
right.
really quiet. The air cleared up. It was it was kind of great. Actually, there's no cars
The
in the
best of all
street. You
worlds.
could go walking in neighborhoods and it'd be empty and quiet, and stuff like that. It was really pretty interesting. But
Mhm.
but now we're kind of back to
Mhm.
the usual.
Right, right.
Uh, you know, it's the usual.
Okay. Right,
Lots of
right, right.
traffic, lots of bullshit.
Sure, sure.
The
Yeah,
usual.
I was living in New York for a while, and then I came here just shy of a year ago, and so I've been back to New York a few times since. But so at first, when it was starting to come back, it was exciting because it's like, oh, it's building, and then you're like, is all of it good though? Like, do we want some of the the change or the differences and all of that? So it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say it was sort of sad to see so much of it kind of come back to normal.
I bet.
Especially the traffic and especially the air sort of getting filthy again and stuff like
Right,
that.
right, 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 right.
You know,
Right.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, so I appreciate you chatting with us. So I sent you some questions and I thought of some more since, of course, as things develop. But
Of course.
so just the framework that I have been working from during the pandemic, a lot of people that I know have been very candid about their struggles, having so many changes in their life, even if they didn't lose anyone to to COVID, even if they still had their jobs intact and, didn't have to move and all of that. It just seems that there's this, not necessarily constant, but an elevated sense of pressure on us, generally speaking, where so many people are trying to do the right thing, but even within our environments, the best that we can do doesn't always, it doesn't tip the scales. You're working with other people
Mm-hmm.
and surroundings. So, um, what I have been noticing is that the people that I sort of gravitated towards in my feed of like the people that were doing interesting things or bringing, again, bringing a sense of candor, bringing a sense of um, just expressing their own experiential knowledge of the world right now and how it's changing. And then also um, oftentimes posing questions that are, trying to bring something like a slightly deeper thought to the world. So that's why, I've really been appreciating your posts over the last few months, that have sort of elevated those things. And so in the process of trying to revisit the interview series that I started last year, is just trying to see if we can continue those conversations of how to feel more connected with externally, but then also internally. What are the things that we can do to try to find our own sense of center and balance in an ever-changing world, and in some ways not changing fast enough in ways we'd like. So that's why I thought you being, how do you term it? Is it a transformational coach? Is that the term?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of prefer that term over life coach.
Sure, sure.
Like it's life coach is fine, but for me, it's like, what does that mean?
Right, right.
Transformational is more sort of descriptive of what actually happens in the
Sure.
process, So
Right.
I connected with that title a little bit more,
Sure.
and there's all kinds of coaches, as you know.
Right.
There's career, there's sex, there's relationships, there's spiritual, there's on and on and on. So and life coach as well. So anyway.
So do you, in your line of work, the types of clients you work with, is it like an umbrella? So do you cover all of those things, or do you have like a specialty within? Since transformational could apply to all of those sort of subsets, or what's your approach?
Well, I promote myself as someone who works with people that are in places in their life where they know they've reached a point where they need to move forward or grow or evolve in some way, but they don't know what that is. And they feel kind of stuck and maybe they have a lot of old behavioral patterns that are kind of stuck in their behavior and they don't know how to get past them, stuff like that. So
Sure.
My belief is that, when we have those issues in our life, then that is sort of, it affects all aspects of our life, from our relationships to our workplace to our connection to our community and the world and our families, whatever, on and on and on. So when we can kind of figure out what's going on and move past that and live more authentically or live more presently, then it'll have a ripple effect to all aspects of our life.
So in general, are there sort of recurring themes that you see with people in terms of not feeling disenfranchised necessarily, that seems too strong of a word, but feeling that sense of disconnect, or that something happened in their life where they kind of had to make a choice and that led them away from sort of their own authenticity? Do you find recurring themes, or it's just like, I got this job and then I kind of stuck with it, or I met this nice person and then we kind of grew apart but didn't want to break up? I didn't know if you see sort of.
It's been a little bit of a mixed bag for me. It's either people that have just reached those points where they just feel stuck and they don't know what to do about it, or they're sort of in a relationship they don't want to be in and they don't know what to do about it, and there's sort of the more you talk to them and the more you reveal what's going on in their lives, it's sort of, they're not happy with anything. So so you have to sort of address everything. And another aspect was someone who wanted to connect better with his community. So we talked a lot about exploring different aspects of the community. So he could see where he fit better.
Right. Right.
So it's been a mixed bag for me. I mean, overarching, people I think are just afraid. They have a lot of fear and insecurity about taking risks and moving forward and being comfortable in safe places, even if those safe places aren't healthy places to be. So I think that's a pretty common theme with everyone.
Right. What kind of advice do you give to people who are risk adverse? Like, are there kind of baby steps? Is it just kind of like, let's face the fear and look at the underlying issues of where those might have.
It's all of that. I mean, it really depends on the client. It's I've had clients that have been so resistant to taking any steps whatsoever that they just can't do it, and they're just not ready to put themselves out there. And then I've had other clients that have like jumped right in and did the work and got into it and made progress really quickly and stuff like that. So it's it's an organic process for me. So So each meeting and each session sort of tells me where to go next
Mm-hmm.
with a person. So it can vary pretty widely.
Did you get an influx during the pandemic, given that so many people were influx
You
more?
know,
Or
it's been pretty quiet. I mean, Reiki was very quiet, you know, being an
mm-hmm.
in-person thing for the most part. I mean, you can do Reiki remotely, and I do have done a fair amount of those as well. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, people want to see you in person,
Sure,
so that has dropped off quite a bit, and it's still pretty
sure.
quiet for me. Coaching, you know, coaching's been quiet too. I think people just kind of don't know what's happening. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of in this, yeah, we're experiencing an historical event, really,
Right,
and we're in the midst of it, and we're living through this event, and people are kind of going, you know, what the fuck is happening? You know,
right, right,
we're navigating new territory, you know, for all of us, you know,
right,
unless we know someone who was alive during, you know, the 100 years ago in the Spanish flu, you know, kind of a
right.
thing. And there's not many of those people around, if any. But so this is all new territory for everybody, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us who are sort of sensitive enough to see and aware enough to see the opportunities in this event, you know, are the ones that are sort of growing and moving forward, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're also seeing the people that are not getting it and kind of
Sure.
staying in the same place and shifting back to old behavior. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't know if I'm rambling or answering your
No, no,
question,
no, no.
but
I mean, and that's what was interesting to me. You know, I'm a small business consultant, so who primarily worked in the service industry, which got eviscerated during, you know, the pandemic. And so that's, you know, a lot of what you'd been writing about really resonated with me, and that's what I thought was interesting. Is here you are, you know, transformational coach, and here I am, a consultant, and usually we're the types of people that people turn to in these pivotal moments. And yet we don't necessarily have a clue either because we're in it as it's
yeah,
evolving. So it
right,
becomes a little bit more challenging
right.
to understand, you know, what the systems are becoming to guide people, you know, in certain directions. I think for you, it might be, I don't want to say easier, but since so much of the work you're requiring is inner work as opposed to me where it's like external trying to figure out, you know, trends and businesses and that kind of thing. It's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's still a bit of a wild card in that direction. But what got you into this work in terms of both Reiki and the coaching?
Well, it's been a pretty fascinating process, actually. I and I have to capsulize a lot here because it's a long story with a lot of detail, but roughly 6 years ago, I made some big life change decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it was the kind of decision where I completely kind of changed everything, you know, and I for a number of years I was aware of how unhappy I was with all aspects of my life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
personally, professionally, relationship. I was in a marriage, I was living in New York, and my career was going nowhere, and I was just, you know, I felt like I had no place to go. I felt stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, I felt stuck to the point where you don't see any possibility
Right.
for change,
Sure.
and you have to decide whether or not to resign yourself to the fact that you're going to live this completely unsatisfied life,
Mm-hmm.
or you change it completely.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I came that close. I came that close
Wow.
to resigning myself,
Wow.
and something changed, switched it for me. And and fast forward, you know, I left New York. I ended my marriage. You know, I just left. I went. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that triggered a huge period of transformation for
Mm-hmm.
me. And yeah, in a lot of ways, you know, challenging and fascinating and exciting, and you know, moments of rediscovering myself and discovering new things about myself, and and discovering my personal value and my self-worth, and learning to operate from that, and
Mm-hmm.
and learning who to give my energy to, and
Right.
whose energy I'm gonna accept, and
Mm-hmm.
who I can be like, fuck you, you can't talk to me that way,
Right, right,
and
right,
learning to do stuff like that, to say, no, this is who I am, and take it or leave it, kind of a
sure,
thing.
sure, sure, sure.
Long story short. So, I went through a therapy process that's helped me navigate this, and that kind of ended, and I wanted another kind of therapy process, but I wanted something different.
Mm-hmm.
And the universe presented me with this person, recommended through somebody else who was a kind of transformational coach, and coupled his sessions with body work.
Okay.
And so I started going through this process with him, and immediately was transformative,
Mm-hmm.
and those sessions, like being on the table with the body work, is I was just feeling stuff leaving my body, and just, and all of this emotional stuff was just coming to the surface and working its way out, and moments of like happiness and elation and like extreme anger, and just all of this stuff was just coming out and coming out and coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And so at one point I was like, what are you doing to me, kind of thing. And he was like, oh,
What the
it's
fuck is
Reiki
this?
based. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had Reiki once in my life, many years ago in New York, and I kind of remember the experience, and not with too much detail, but I remember thinking it was interesting and all of that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And he was also, through his own learning process and his personal history, incorporating other cultural elements into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, he was coaching me about spiritual stuff and living consciously, and all of that kind of
This
thing.
feels very non New York as you move to the
Oh
California.
yeah, very California. And
This like spiritual awakening and body work and all of this that isn't as common, I
yeah,
don't think, in New York. Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure my friends in New York, when I've talked about this shift, I think they're all kind of like, okay,
He drank the Kool-Aid.
yeah, okay, fine,
Right, right, right.
and then they don't ask me anything about it at all. So
Sure.
for the most part, so so around that same time, in this process that I was going through with him, I was thinking about shifting things professionally, because I've been a graphic designer for many, many years, and have just reached the point where I don't enjoy it anymore, and
Mhm.
have been thinking a lot about doing something different. I just didn't want to shift to another creative field, and blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and I was really feeling like I wanted to do something that made a difference
Mhm.
in the world, that had some meaning for me, that would be something that was a positive thing to put out into the world, and but I didn't know what that was, and
Mhm.
and I was realizing that through this process of receiving Reiki energy, through my own personal sessions, that I was becoming really sensitive. Well, I had really always been sensitive to energy, and always kind of picked up on energies, and
Mhm.
people and
Yeah, the
places and
same.
things like that. And I've always been pretty intuitive, and even if I didn't trust my intuition, I
Mhm.
knew the messages were there,
Sure.
and so I started to think a lot more about doing that kind of work, and it just ended up that my coach, is a Reiki master. So you learn from Reiki masters. So
Mhm.
I started to learn from him. And around that same time, going through the coaching process with him, I started to share experiences on Instagram,
Mhm.
mainly. A lot of the kinds of stuff that you've been reading on my posts.
Sure.
And number one, realizing that I was able to sort of articulate my own feelings at that time, you know, and that my experiences were resonating with other people.
Right.
And at times we would end up having discussions around growth and healing, and that also started to happen with people in person as well, you know. And I started to notice that my mind would go into this kind of therapy mode, you know, and just do this shift, and it was really natural for me. And I found that I was really enjoying that process, and it felt natural to me. And so both the Reiki and learning Reiki and learning coaching just felt really natural to me.
And to see how the two integrate together, it makes, you know, it seems like a perfect fit in that sense. So
they really are,
yeah.
and to get them simultaneously was really such a gift. And because you're coming at things from different directions, you're coming on one side with the Reiki, you're coming at it from a really purely energetic level, and you're releasing stuff on an energetic level. And with coaching, you know, you're talking through it and you're releasing it in that way. So it's a really great process, I think.
Can you explain to us a little bit about like the foundation of Reiki, and how I understand it's energy based, but can you tell us like how you like manipulate it, how you shift the energy within the body? I've never had it personally, so I've worked
Okay.
more with like acupuncture and that sort of thing, which, you know, I know it's
Yeah.
different, but it still moves energy.
Well, it's Reiki itself. It's a universal life force energy. If we understand that everything in the world is made of energy, then we can understand that Reiki is a part of all of that. And I'm speaking very simplistically here, but and it's also important to understand that as a practitioner does not create the energy; they're a conduit for it.
Okay.
So when you're trained, when you're trained, you receive access to that energy, like direct access, and there's a variety of symbols and things like that. And when you're trained, you receive what are called attunements, which is like a little kind of physical ceremony that grants you that access. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what happens. So during a session, even though I may sit down with someone and we may talk about what their goals are, what their intentions are, you know, what they kind of want to work on, Reiki kind of has a mind of its own. It flows through me. I feel it flowing through me. I direct it to the client. The client feels it flowing through them. And you kind of never know what's going to happen. You know, sometimes it's predictable. You know, they release energy and they de-stress or stuff like that. And sometimes people release things emotionally, and it's transformational for them. I've had people have some physical ailments be repaired after sessions, which is kind of amazing. And I kind of never know what's happening. You know, I feel it, and sometimes it's like they're really super strong, and because as a practitioner, when I give a healing, I get a healing as well. So I feel the energy working on me simultaneously, and I'm kind of connected with the client, and we're, you know, feeling the energy is often flowing between us. So it's, I feel like it's magic in a lot of ways, you
Right.
know,
No, it sounds like it. I think
and
I was going to say a question just came in for you. I don't know if you saw. It says, "Are there some clients where this wouldn't work or that would avoid treating?"
if we're talking about Reiki, I would say no. Actually, I think anybody can be treated. It's it depends on what's going on with the client. You know, if there's severe trauma involved, or, you know, something like that, you can definitely work on that. But I think it's important, if someone does have like severe trauma of some kind, that they're working with a therapist in conjunction with doing something like Reiki too, because I think they can work well together.
Sure.
I mean, I know people that, you know, bawl their eyes out at sessions because they're releasing stuff. Um, and physically people, you can tell when they're releasing energy because they twitch and their
Oh,
arms,
really?
and their
Oh,
arms like
wow.
jump or things like that. And so, every session is different. And if I see one person multiple times, each session is different. With them too, it can really vary. So
As it shifts and evolves, as things are flowing a little bit better or
yeah,
something.
yeah. And it depends on what's going on with the person at the time and all of that. So, I mean, it's important to understand that the Reiki is always a positive energy. It's not a harmful energy in any way. If people feel some anxiety afterwards, either right afterwards or the next day, it just means that something is being released. And but it's always positive energy.
That's interesting. I've been reading more about, like vagal nerve theory and somatic therapeutic approaches and that sort of thing, sort of like mind body. As you were saying, so much of the energy gets sort of stored or stuck in the body, and what we're cognizant of doesn't always connect with the physiological. So oftentimes there's, kind of the higher mind of the experiential side of things or the intellectual side of emotions versus what we sense within the body. And I think we've done a good job in this culture to kind of separate the two. And so that's what, hearing you talk about people who've experienced trauma or those kinds of elements, I was sort of wondering what that release is and if it does sort of integrate or if it's separate, so are there people that you exclusively do Reiki on, or is it always part of the transformational coaching as well?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had sort of a combo person in a while.
Okay.
So right now it's exclusively one or the other.
Okay.
I mean, there's always some discussion with Reiki, with a Reiki client, beforehand what's going on with them, and we'll discuss anything around like behavior or trauma or something like that if it's pertinent to why they're coming to see me. So, but yeah, there's sort of like the full on, double method,
Right.
recently. So
right.
yeah. Plus, it costs more too, but not everybody can do that.
Sure.
To do both, but yeah, I mean, I hope that answered that
Yeah.
question, but.
So in terms of it sounds like, when you're doing the work and you're the conduit, it sounds like from what you've said that you go through the process as well, that you are changed with each session as well. So how has that been for you? Because and forgive me, I'm projecting, but I can imagine there might be some moments where you're going through something on your own. You're like, oh, like this is the last thing I want to do. It's like, have to kind of shift my own energy, or, to not be able to separate the two since you are, as you said, like the conduit. Are there moments where it becomes exhausting? There are moments where, does it ever feel depleting for you, or is it rejuvenating? Like, what's the process?
I mean, for the most part, it's rejuvenating. There's been a couple of moments where I remember working on someone and afterwards feeling like really nauseous.
Really?
And yeah, and then one very interesting thing that sort of happens in sessions for me is the energy can become so strong that I have to be very conscious of not falling on the floor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. When it first kind of started for me, it kind of caught me off guard a little bit, and I have to be very conscious of grounding myself so I don't just give out, because I'm losing a sense of things physically and I'm just feeling pure energy. And it's an interesting sensation, and I kind of, it's good that the client is kind of laying there in front of me because I can just kind of hold onto their arm,
As you slide down the table.
And and I often sort of warn clients, if I fall on the floor, don't worry about it. It's okay. But it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
So it's hard to say what's going to come up. You know, I was working on someone one time, and all of a sudden I got this really intense pain in one of my shoulders, and the pain like just moved down my arm, and running a session is an intuitive process. I'm usually kind of intuitively told where to go on a person. So if I feel pain like that on someone, then that's a message for me to go to that person's shoulder, you know. So I went to his shoulder and I worked on that, and afterwards I found out that his shoulder had been dislocated, you know, a number of years ago through a traumatic event. Wow. So that says that we still can store trauma energy in certain areas of our body.
Right. I thought you were going to tell me you were having a heart attack based on the other client or something. I was scared. That's where it was going.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hope not. But
right.
I mean, I have to believe that Reiki wouldn't let that happen. But,
right. So in terms of being a practitioner, since it's, you know, energetically based, do you feel like there's certain people that wouldn't be good practitioners? Or is it the type of thing that everybody theoretically could move past their blockages to be a practitioner?
Well, I mean, I think it certainly helps if a person has some sensitivity to energy. You know, if you sort of read through sort of the biographies and information of historical information about Reiki's, you know, beginning and practices and teachings and stuff like that, it's generally stated that anybody can learn.
Okay. Wow.
And the energy is there for anyone to access, and it is really. So, you know, becoming a master teacher is sort of a different story. It's kind of like a calling, and you know, if you feel really strongly about it, then you know, go for it, kind of a thing. But you know, back when people were initially learning and becoming master teachers, it was usually the teacher themselves who determined whether or not somebody was deemed worthy enough to be a master teacher. So it's, you know, I've been seeing a lot of these kind of silly Facebook ads about become a Reiki master in 2 days. Well, you can't really do that.
Right,
you know? It's not how it works. Or you know, become a Reiki practitioner online. Well, you can't really do that. I mean, you can. I mean, obviously, you can learn about the history and the associated symbols, you know, and stuff like that. But to receive the actual attunements to be a practitioner, it's a hands-on kind of a thing. Sure. Which I can't imagine is going to happen over Zoom, you know. Right. I can't imagine how that would happen. But does that answer your question?
It does. So in terms of, you know, you've mentioned sort of calling, you know, like it being a calling a few times. And do you feel like this is sort of like your legacy project? It sounds like before you were, you know, creative with graphic design and all of that. Do you feel like this sort of taps into a more altruistic, you know, beneficial to society, like role that, you know, suits you? Or do you feel like it's just one chapter and who knows what will come next? Or what are your thoughts?
You know, I think about legacy, you know, and especially after reaching a big birthday recently, you know, I think about what you want to leave behind, and I think people confuse legacy with, you know, children or you know, starting a nonprofit organization, you know, or something like that, and legacies are really about who we are in the world and what kind of people we are in the world, and for me, I do kind of see this as a legacy for myself, you know. And I was just sort of having a discussion with my teacher about what we want to be in the world as a healing presence and be a person for people to sort of look to and say, you know, or look to or come to and for help or for healing. And you know, and I think that's important thing to do for the
Mhm.
world. You know,
Sure.
if COVID has taught us anything, is our global interconnectivity, and
Right.
that we all live on the same planet, and then that we're all connected in our communities. And if we stop functioning in this sort of isolated, you know, me mentality,
Mhm.
then we can sort of uplift our communities and uplift our world,
Mhm.
and for everyone be living in a better place.
Sure.
And so so yeah, I mean, it is a legacy for me. I mean, where it's ultimately going, I don't know.
Mhm.
You know, it's like we were saying earlier, we're in new territory in terms of navigating our worlds, and we're going, and where the world is going, and all of that. So it's sort of hard to tell,
Sure.
and yeah.
I mean, so you know, as you were talking about interconnectivity in the global sphere, and then also more with our local communities, you know, watching the news, you often see sort of a rift between the people that are trying to follow the, you know, directions for the greater good, and then you see people who feel like this is the greatest injustice they've ever personally experienced, and wanting to fight tooth and nail, and wanting to say that, you know, the data is incorrect, and on and on. And it seems to be that, you know, divergent paths. You know, some people throw around the term like narcissism for the people who are fighting it, you know, and um, you know, and I keep coming back to this concept of like compassion and altruism, and I guess between those two, um, it does seem to kind of shake us up, where this is a very pivotal moment in history that we our generations haven't really experienced before. So, in terms of things like compassion and altruism, do you think that those are things that can be developed? Do you think they are inherent in our core that get activated? Do you think somebody can be taught it if it's, you know, absent in them growing up? I guess I'm just curious, doing energy work, if there's a way to kind of, somebody's tipping more towards narcissism, is there a switch to flip in Reiki where you can make them more compassionate? But
I know it'd be great if it was that simple, you know, if
right,
we could just
right.
walk up
Can
to
we
them
fix
and
them?
be like a clapper, you know,
Right,
clap on, you know.
right.
Um, you know, first of all, I believe that compassion exists in everyone, whether we see it or not. You know, whether they're the biggest dick in the world, you know, like Donald Trump.
Mhm.
And, you know, there is compassion in there somewhere. And I think at that level, it takes a pretty substantial traumatic event to get people to switch their thinking and
Mhm.
to start to see the world in a different way.
Sure.
Um, Cultivating compassion means getting out of your head. It means getting out of, you know, stepping outside this the kind of a selfish mentality, and looking at the needs of other people, and
Mhm.
trying to understand what other people are feeling and going through.
Mhm.
And I think that can be learned, but the person has to be willing to do that.
Sure.
And how do you make them willing to do that? I don't know. You know, it's people reach tipping points, you know, through traumatic events,
Mhm.
or you know, they're just tired of being, you know, a selfish jerk, you know, or something, and they suddenly see themselves and go, wait a minute, why am I behaving in this way? Why am I being such a jerk? You know, kind of a
Mhm.
thing. Maybe I need to be nicer and be kinder to
Mhm.
people, and because when they start to do that, they see they can make it can make a difference in people's lives, you know,
Mhm.
and for, you know, people who do understand compassion and and operate from a place of compassion, then, you know, all you can really do is be that person.
Mhm.
And there will always be people in the world that see how you're behaving.
Mhm.
If you're being a compassionate person, or being a nice person, or being kind to the checkout clerk at the store,
Right.
or whoever, and letting people cut in traffic,
Sure, sure.
simple little things like that. And there's always the possibility that someone's going to see that and inspire them to do the same.
Hmm.
And the more people that see that, the more people kind of light up and start to live by example as well. So,
Hmm.
I truly believe that everyone has compassion within them.
Hmm.
It's just a willingness to see it and express it.
Sure. In terms of, we were talking much earlier about trying to live more authentically, and as you were speaking, I can't help but wonder when people deviate from their authenticity, when they feel pulled in different directions from what they might inherently feel aligned to do, and they kind of go off path. Um, it's I don't want to make generalizations, but I can't help but wonder if that's where a lot of the discord sort of starts in our lives, is in those places, in those moments of living in ways that aren't sort of integral to who we are or our value systems or that sort of thing. And it might come innocently, but I guess in terms of the coaching part, um, how and I think I was trying to ask in a different way earlier, but like how do you get people to face what's, I'm trying to think of how to ask it, but how do you get people to face like those core values or who they might intrinsically be, if sometimes we are so disconnected we don't even know how to kind of excavate it? I don't know if there's like a process to get there, or if it's just sort of this natural reveal as the facades kind of wear away. I don't know. I guess I'm curious your thoughts.
Yes, I
So
understand.
I think it's a
No,
very roundabout
no, it's okay.
question. So.
Um, with coaching, it's a lot of talk. It's a lot of me listening and stuff like that, and there's this always this understanding that people are so much in their heads, and
Mhm.
they're operating from this place of fear and insecurity so much that they feel stuck. So
Mhm.
what I like to work on with people is them being conscious of their behavior. And for example, being in a moment where they feel insecure,
Mhm.
there's and just going, telling them to just sort of stop in that moment, look at what they're feeling, look at how
Mhm.
they're reacting and behaving, and just kind of step back and step outside of yourself and say,
Mhm.
how can I counteract that? How can I behave in a different way that's going to be healthier for me?
Mhm.
Because if we just start doing things that's healthier for me, and I don't mean that in a selfish way, it means that you're being more authentic and you're
Mhm.
being your true self,
Sure.
which puts positive energy out into the world.
Right. Right.
So,
To be more the conscious observer of yourself and the patterns and.
yeah, because I think, we run on autopilot so much, and we react to things in the same way so much,
Mhm.
and if we stop and look at them and realize that maybe it's not very healthy,
Mhm.
our reaction is not very healthy, or it's not very healthy to, scream at the checkout clerk at the grocery store, they're just doing their job,
Mhm.
and and they may be having a bad day themselves. So you just sort of need to kind of like step back and stop and look at what you're feeling and how you're reacting and go, is this okay? Is this not okay?
Mhm.
How can I do this differently?
Mhm.
And when you start to do that, and that starts to become your normal way of operating, then you can possibly, stop the unhealthy behavior.
Mhm.
It's, I mean, I wish I could say that we completely remove our unhealthy behavior and our traumas, but but we kind of don't. They're always going to be a part of us in some way. And I'm sure you've heard there's a lot of talk about shadow work these days. It's sort of a
Exactly. Right.
hot
Right.
topic right
Right.
now, you
Right.
know.
Right. Right.
And I think it's an important topic, but you know, that's part of the shadow is understanding that our traumas exist there, and how can we balance them out, you know, so we're not letting those traumas, you know, run our lives, that we can operate from a place from our own creative beliefs, our own core beliefs. And you know, when we kind of switch that, we're not reacting to our traumas, but we're creating how we're behaving and how we're moving through the world, then you know, we have a better chance of being happier people and more positive people in our
Sure.
world. So yeah.
Do you actively work with like do you kind of immerse your clients within shadow work, or is it, you know, you're just sort of using that as a touch point now? Like, do you go there? Or?
You know, it kind of overlays, you know, and again, it depends on what's going on with the person. You know, if it's heavy if it's their behavior is heavy in the shadow, then, you know, I kind of focus on that a little bit more.
Sure.
But you know, shadow work is really pretty interesting work, you know, and it makes a lot of sense to me. So I do kind of try to employ it, even if I kind of don't really talk about it directly. I just kind of overlay ideas kind of onto other parts of the process.
Sure.
Yeah.
In terms of like a general practice, you know, as so many people are experiencing higher levels of anxiety or again, discord and just feeling, you know, discontent or malcontent during the pandemic, are there smaller things that you can suggest that can kind of help keep us grounded in these moments to you know, feel a little bit more rooted in the transitions?
Yes. Yeah, there is. I mean, there's some really simple things like having access to nature. You know, being out in nature is really so important. And even if you are a person that sort of hates being in nature, you know, it's the energy in nature is very sort of healing and comforting and stuff like that. And even if you just go sit at the beach on a towel, you know, for a while,
Sure.
or go to your park down the street and go for a little walk, or sit on the bench and, you know, look at stare at the trees for a little while. You know, it's healthy and it's good. But you know, in these sort of moments of big events like this, or whether it's a global pandemic or, you know, some sort of personal trauma, you know, health wise or financial wise or something like that, it's again, it's good to sort of step back and look at it and kind of go, what is there for me to learn in this moment? And looking at these events as like teachable moments, and
Sure.
because they're here for us to learn, they're an opportunity for something, and you have to figure out what it is. You know, for the pandemic, for me, I mean, I'm pretty convinced that it's an opportunity for the world to look at themselves and go, how can we do this differently? How can we be different people on this planet so that we're, you know, that we're a healthier world in general, you know, kind of thing, in very simplistic terms. But you know, it's different for everybody, and you know, whether it's, you know, if you're going through something like cancer or a huge personal breakup or a divorce or something like that, it's like, ask yourself what you can learn in this moment and in this event, and what can you take forward with you to the next chapter.
Sure.
Because our life is made up of chapters, I believe, and we learn stuff in those chapters so we can take it to the next one and apply it to the next one, and hopefully the next chapter is better. You know,
right.
And but we're always kind of growing and evolving, and we're accumulating our experiences and our lessons.
One thing that I was curious about that isn't directly related, but you know, you speak very openly about being an out gay man, And so I was just curious in terms of like the evolution of, LGBT rights and being in the forefront in the news, over the last several years, that kind of thing, where it is much more accessible and acceptable and all of that. I didn't know if you felt a shift in your identity. A lot of people, I'm in my mid to late 40s now. And so, I came out at 15 when, it wasn't as common. I came out as trans at 19, but I didn't actually transition until I was 30.
Mm.
And so to see now, it feels like once every 2 or 3 weeks, I have a friend who's asking about their child who wants to transition, and very young,
Mm-hmm.
and just a completely different world, and in many ways like revolutionary and exciting to see that this is schools are having questions about pronouns or having what's your preferred name, and can we call your home, and ask your parents, and all these sorts of things. So as much as I see the backlash at times, I always try to observe that the backlash is there because of the progress, that
Mm-hmm.
it's the
Mm-hmm.
result of, meaning that everything's shifting forward, and that those people are kind of, clamoring on to the old ways to kind of resist. But so I guess I was just curious in terms of your own identity, growing up, how it's felt to see that evolution on a personal and kind of developmental level.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. I mean, the comfort level that you sort of talk about, that you were just talking about. Now
Mhm.
it's so like common knowledge.
Right.
I
As a
know a
matter of
couple
fact.
people now that are like who have children that have recently declared themselves trans and stuff like that, just kind of like out
Mhm.
of the blue, and so and I've always lived in big cities as
Mhm.
well. I mean, I grew up in a small town, suburb of Portland, Oregon,
Mhm.
and no, being gay was just not talked about,
Mhm.
but we're talking, you know 50 years ago at this point.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So not a surprise, but now it's completely different, and I think it's really pretty amazing.
Mhm.
And the thing for me about the community at this point is that I feel like there's so much history with this community around acceptance and visibility
Right.
and all of that, and people put their lives on the line and put their reputations on the line, and really fought for that acceptance,
Mhm.
and risked so much,
Right.
and for us to be here in this moment with so much comfort,
Mhm.
and granted, I know it's not worldwide. There are pretty
Sure.
challenging places in the world where being gay is pretty scary.
Mhm.
But in my kind of observations, I stand back and I feel like, okay, the community's done all this external work about getting this acceptance and this
Mhm.
understanding and this visibility, and everybody's okay with the gays, and my best friends are gays, and my son's gays, and
Mhm.
they're getting married, and all this kind of stuff, and everybody's great. But internally, the
Right.
community feels very different to me. I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of judgment, and there's a lot of really kind of mean, judgy behavior in the community, and it's really disheartening to me to see,
Mhm.
because here we had worked so hard, and to not be judged, then we're judging each other within our own community.
Sure.
So I don't have a lot of answers around that. It's I believe it's a thing that will work itself out.
Well, I
Um,
was.
it's disheartening to me,
Mhm.
really. It's so. I'm sorry. Go ahead and
No,
ask.
no, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, and that's what I was just curious being in LA. I've never lived in LA. I lived in San Francisco and New York and DC for 20 years. So I was just curious where there's so much pressure on the physicality in LA in general. and about that sense of like perfection, about, you know, physiological perfection at any age, at any body, anything like that. So I was curious, being such a spiritually minded person, if there, you know, if there's a tension there, you know, within the community of being this, you know, kind of heart-centered person, but then also seeing, you know, so much pressure for everybody to be, you know, chiseled and, you know, all of that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, and I don't think there's no criticism or judgment on my part about anyone who wants to like build their body and make it as
sure, sure.
beautiful and perfect as they want, you know. But let's talk about balancing it out. Let's talk about looking at what kind of person you are in the world, other than being like, oh, you don't have the kind of body that's good enough to be in my world, you know, instead of looking at that person going, oh, your accomplishments are and your experiences, and you're a kind person, and you're really interesting, and you're intelligent, and stuff like that, and assessing the relationship on those terms instead.
Sure.
And that's what I'm kind of missing, and I don't see a lot of.
Okay.
I mean, I call it the fuckability factor. And I've heard from other people that just say, well, you know, I'm not considered fuckable, so I'm invisible. I'm ignored. And if, you know, you are considered fuckable and you don't play sort of the games in the community that to be accepted, then you're ignored as well. So,
sure.
so it's a tough crowd, you know, it's a really tough crowd. And yeah, LA has always had that reputation for physical perfection, and because of the entertainment industry and all of that, and lots of people maneuvering for position and all of that. So, so it's an especially tough crowd here, but I think, but
right.
But I know it's like that in other places too, and so I don't think LA is particularly unique. So, but this whole idea of judgment within the community itself.
I think we just lost your audio. Oop, it cut out the last second. Sorry, I think I lost your audio for 1 second there.
Yeah, someone tried to call me.
Okay, sorry. Well, we are coming up on the 1 hour mark, so I wasn't sure if there were any sort of you know, parting thoughts that you wanted to share as we sign off. I didn't know, you know, what's. I know
Yeah,
we
we
covered a
covered
lot of
a
different.
lot. I mean,
I
if
know,
you
I
have any
know.
additional questions, you know, feel free to throw them in there. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just in terms of your hopes, what's, you know, with everything again sort of in flux right now, like what's your hope for kind of like the immediate future as we're all in this together trying to figure out like how to move forward collectively?
You know, I guess I hope that people will start to look at the world in a more interconnected way, and understanding more that we can all kind of help each other in some way, you know, and kind of step outside this selfishness that's been so prevalent for so long.
Sure.
And you know, I believe there's shifts with that, and I personally know a lot of people, especially within this last year, and me included. This has been a very big year about kind of redefining and rewiring and really looking at who we are and what we want and what kind of people we are in the world, and all of that. And I think as we move forward, it's going to be interesting to see kind of where all of this is going. You know, even though it's been, you know, these last couple of years have just been major ass kickers for everybody.
Right.
It's at the same time, it's really fascinating because, as I said before, we are living in history right now, and in a world that's completely changing, and where's this gonna go?
Right, right.
I
Just sort
don't
of
know.
betting
I
pool.
mean, we all have sort of visions of what we want our lives to look like, and we kind of move towards our vision, kind of thing. And I think that for a lot of people, that we're suddenly in this place where we have no vision of
Mm.
what's gonna happen,
Right, right,
and what
right.
our lives are going to look like. And I have no idea. I mean, I have some basic plans for myself, and things like that, and things I want to change.
Hmm.
But on a bigger scale, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't know, I
Right.
don't know.
You're in the creek with the rest of us.
Yeah, I am,
Right.
and yeah.
So if people want to get in touch with you in terms of life coaching, can they reach you through this? I know you also have the Reiki Daddy page as well, so I'll put both up.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if
There's
you're taking new clients. I don't know what your availability looks
Oh
like.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm taking new clients, and I'd love to hear from people.
Okay.
And like you said, they can send me a message either through this page, or I have the Reiki Daddy page, and I also
Okay.
have my website, reikidaddy.com.
Okay.
Um, and
Excellent.
there's, people are curious about Reiki or coaching itself. There's information
Sure.
on there as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it sounds as a Reiki teacher, it sounds like people can be students of yours. Is that right as well? To
Yeah, I
become
do teach
teachers?
people. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I know you got a lot of compliments on your appearance, so I just I didn't want those to go ignored.
Well, thank you. That's all that matters, really.
Exactly.
And
I was going to interview hot guys and then just see like a flood of people coming
yeah,
in.
yeah,
So
I'm really as like dumb as a doorknob, and so thanks. Yeah, but thank you for the compliments, people.
I didn't want them to feel ignored as we were trying to take other comments down. Well, thank you again. Thanks
Well,
for
thank
being
you.
with
Well, this is
us.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, good.
All right. Take care. Bye,
Okay,
guys.
bye.